shopping today and I'll go to school tomorrow. First impressions are incredibly important.
Honey, you can make a wonderful first impression.
Brenda, how could you?
He was a jerk, okay?
I've made my choice and I choose me.
Sound Connection podcast listeners, welcome back to another episode of 90210 NoSo. I am JT, and joining me here on this chronological journey through the history of Beverly Hills, 90210 is my partner Tim. Tim, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm kicking it here at the Walsh house, getting kind of attached to it, liking my lifestyle these days.
Yeah, settling in. It's it's been a fun journey so far. If you're new here to the show, what we do is Tim and I are with you every episode, usually every 3 to 4 weeks. We hit a new installment. We are chronologically going through the history of the program, and each episode we do have a new third guest that rotates in and joins us for discussing that installment. So tonight, our special guest is a big 90210 fan. He is a host of his own shows as well out there. He's one of the hosts of Blockbuster Rewind on the Place to Be Nation Pop Experience, and that is Mr. Eric Eells. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Justin. I'm glad after all this time we finally got a chance to hook up together on a pod.
Wow, our first one, huh? Look at that.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, man.
History in the making.
Yeah. All right, got 2 out of the way with Scottzilla.
Well, this one should go a lot smoother. All right, so Eric, obviously you're a listener and fan of the show, so welcome in. And I will say to anyone out there listening, as I say every episode, if you'd like to join us, if you've never even done a podcast or never talked to us before, but you listen in and you think you'd like to give it a shot, you're just a 90210 diehard, or maybe you hate the show and you want to talk to us about it, just reach out to me on social media and we'll get you booked for an episode. We're looking for voices, new and old, hate or love, that want to come on and just chat with me and Tim about the program. Tim, real quick, before we get started, you want to give a quick shout out to our favorite Instagram account?
Yes, it's BH90210 Restored on Instagram. So this is an Instagram account where guys just going through and reinserting the scenes with the original music as they were aired when this show was broadcast back in the early 90s. So if you don't like hearing that very obvious and often very bad temp music, replacement music on Hulu or whatever streaming service you're using, check out BH90210 Restored on Instagram. And it's just scene by scene, episode by episode. And early in the first season, go way, way down, and you'll find them. Most of them, anyway. And there's some few I've noticed that aren't on there because we also use a resource to tell us exactly which songs were in which scenes and which episodes, and there's a few that just aren't there, but the big ones certainly that you would remember if you do remember how the show was originally presented, they're there.
Okay, very good. So be sure to check that out. And Eric, as we always do with our guests, why don't you take a minute or two here and just explain to us your history with the show? Were you watch it back in the day? Did you find it later? How big of a fan are you? Just kind of tell us your relationship with Beverly Hills 90210.
Well, I think I'm a decent sized fan. Certainly a lot of the first half of the show. It's certainly a lot of resonates a lot more with us in our discussions. I came to the show differently from most of you. I found the show when it was in syndication. Probably around like 97 or so. I was 13. So, and I was an early avid watcher of FX when it launched. So, and that was like the first place I saw the show. I think they were repeating it like every day, every afternoon, as well as I was later on WPIX 11, like that nice right after the Disney afternoon, leading into the evenings, the WB programming. Yeah. So, I watched pretty much a fair amount, like the first 7 seasons, just pretty much to the end of college. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize at the time, like, the gaunt of episodes per season, how much story they ran through. But, I was a teen who was looking for something interesting to watch when I wasn't doing homework. And the show very much captivated me. But obviously, it couldn't keep me to a point. and obviously it's more prevalent why when a certain character leaves the show during the college years. So, but I never really finished the show proper. I never really seen the end of it, but I've rewatched like the early years considerably over time, and certainly as we've talked about the show more recently over the past year. So there's a thing to dig into during COVID times.
Very good. I feel like a lot of people definitely either rediscovered or discovered, at least in our little circle, the show during that time. Just looking, I mean, a big part of it is there are so many episodes. If you are going to do a binge, it's just so many seasons and so many episodes per season. And we're here to talk about as many as we can. So, all right, why don't we dive in? We are looking at season 1, episode 6, Higher Education. First aired on November 15th, 1990. So we're going to talk all about it. And Tim, noticeably missing one of our favorite characters on the show in this episode. Silver did not appear.
I know. He's been kind of sort of a dark horse in our rankings, I feel like, quietly rising in those ranks. But it's a shame we don't see him here, although I do wonder what sort of role he could have filled. This is, again, a more Walsh-centric episode of the show, another Brandon-centric episode. To be honest with you, I'm a little... I didn't think it was bad, per se. I mean, we'll get into it, but I think they could stand to mix it up a little bit just in terms of going between Brandon and Brenda, if it is going to be so Walsh kid-centric.
It's an interesting take because it's something I noted a couple times in this episode, and it's felt like this now for a few, that Brenda almost feels like comic relief to Brandon's like deeper storylines. And that like definitely the last episode with the car, we talked about it a bunch. Or was that 2 ago? I forget when that was, but with the car gets stolen, and all that. And now this one very much was like she was the B plot, but it was played for laughs versus Brandon getting the heavy story. So it'll be interesting on a couple fronts. Like one, when does Brenda's stuff become heavier? And 2, when does the other characters really start to get like their own subplots and stories? Like we do see a little bit here, but when do they start to get their own shit not tied to the Walshes?
And with Brenda, it almost seems like a maturity issue where Brandon is presented as so much more of a grown-up than she is, and she's like the little girl from Midwest who's trying to fit in. They're still doing that angle, but she's just, to your point, given these very silly plots that, I don't know, maybe those are relatable to young women that age in the early 90s to some extent.
But it almost feels like they shouldn't be twins. Like she's young. They play it like she's younger, to your point.
Like she's younger. But maybe all of the viewers would appreciate something a little meatier for Brenda, I think, even if she is... I mean, at least they really differentiated the characters. I know we've joked about how they're both like these savants who are good at everything in the world, but emotionally they're very different. So that's nice, but let's give Brenda a little bit more to do and treat her with a little bit more sophistication than they have.
Well, I certainly think we're going to get that chance over like the next 3 episodes or so you're going to cover. Getting her a chance to stay on her own and be taken more serious.
Yeah, I mean, we're still in the single digits here, episode wise.
It's early on, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and does it mean it just feels like when the supporting characters really stand out, like come on their own, is more in the second season.
Right.
When I just feel like they're involved, but it has to involve the Walshes in some way.
Right.
In this first season.
It definitely feels that way for a while. Yeah. All right, let's dig in. So the Peach Pit is here. It's still the old design, kind of has like the cursive neon front. And really feels more like a diner. This is going to sound like a real pedantic nitpick, but it feels more like a diner from like the 50s versus the Peach Pit we'll get to know that feels like a tribute diner to the 50s. You know what I mean? Like, like what it becomes, it's like designed to be like one versus right now it feels like it's a more of like a relic diner, like that existed in the 50s and never changed its aesthetic. That's like what we're looking at right now.
It's like a set that they reused.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so right out of the gate, I love Nats, but I didn't really get. So Brandon's like trying to study and work at the same time. He's got the book set up on the side, and Nat's like, "Hey, buddy, your food's up. Like, take a break from the book." And then Brandon literally takes one step to the left, picks up the dish, and puts it on the counter. Like Nat couldn't fucking do that for him. Like, it's like he had to run it across the restaurant. Like Nat literally walked by where the dish was and where the person was sitting. Like Brandon could have easily just put it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the gate, I already get annoyed.
Well, you know what they say. When it comes to mayonnaise, you can never be too specific.
I've never heard that in my life.
Well, you haven't heard our last episode or two episodes ago. I can't remember. Yeah, deep dive on mayonnaise with Nat Basicchio.
Okay, I must miss that. It's been a rough 2 weeks. I'll admit it.
I forgive you. It's all good.
All right. So anyway, Nat's laziness aside, Brandon does that. We then meet Mr. Danzel, who is the big history teacher, and right away he's kind of an annoying prick. And the class itself annoyed me with the grading on a curve, which I luckily never fully experienced that. I don't know if you guys did, but I always heard about it.
I wanted to ask
never
you
really
all
had
about that. Yeah.
Deal with it, but I do know it sucks. And I will say this: they did a good job explaining what it was for anyone who didn't know. Like they outline it pretty quickly. Like so, you have the high, you have the low, and then everyone else pretty much just gets the middle grade, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it is. And that sounds like I'd be fucking pissed. Like I don't mind that Brandon's outraged over it. He's pissed that Steve got an A. And then you get this random Donna fawning over Steve getting the A. She's still completely useless too. Like we have not seen any fleshing out of Donna. Tim, any experience with you with grading on curves?
A little bit, I would say in college more so than high school, but not really applied in the way that it is in this class. I mean, you would have, and by that I mean it would only be used in order to help people, really.
Right.
I mean, you would have the outliers who would do really well or even really poorly, but not in a way where they would ruin the curve for the rest of the class. Like those people would just be like, you could get like over 100 if that was the case, and everybody else would just sort of move up the line. And that's really not the way that it's utilized in this episode. It's really kind of, as you said, sort of fucking people over potentially. And,
he gives like 2 A's, and then 2 people must get the worst grade.
Yeah,
and then everyone else gets like a C. Like, and that's it.
Yeah, you sort of get a ceiling on how well you can do unless you're a really extraordinary performer. Yeah. So yeah, it's I've never been subjected to that sort of grading treatment. No. Maybe it's a California. Maybe that's a Beverly Hills thing.
I wouldn't even feel like that's a regular high school thing. Period. I mean, maybe a private school, certainly a college, but I've never been subject to that kind of grading.
Yeah, and I mean, I went to
pulling my hair out more
high school, and I went to a private high school. And I heard about it, but I don't remember ever experiencing it. So it must have been in that school somewhere, But anyway, after watching this, I was really happy I never experienced it because I probably would have fucking hated it.
Yeah.
As someone who was a good performer but not always top, was probably would have really broken me. All right, so Brandon, another interesting tick here. We're not yet fully into Andrea. Yeah, he's calling her Andrea a lot, which I was waiting for her to correct him, but she did not. Then we get Kelly shows up. She's super horny for Dylan and flirting with him. So it's kind of the first we've seen of that. Where right now, to this point, Dylan's really just kind of existed in Brandon's stratosphere and not anyone else's. And Brandon even says it at some point, like my friend Dylan, later in the show. And then Dylan, we get his first interest in Brenda, and she's kind of feeling it. So you get Brenda and Kelly in the hall. Kelly's flirting hard with Dylan. Dylan mentions he's into blondes, but he's definitely showing a shine for Brenda, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how can you not be attracted to that face despite wearing those overalls? I mean,
oh my God.
That face overpowers everything else. So, but yeah, absolutely. It's Dylan like interacting with other members of the gang of sorts. Like it just feels very natural. It's not like an oddity of sorts.
And they've done a good job to this point making all this feel natural. Like, I like that they're not force feeding the first interactions with these characters outside of Brendan and Brenda, obviously, because Brandon and Brenda, because they're new, but like they just kind of make it feel like we did just drop in to their school with the Walsh. So like, yeah, they all know. Of course, Kelly knows Dylan, right? It's not like everyone's introducing everyone for the first time.
Yeah,
that's what bothers me about. I mean, later on when Dylan and Kelly really heat up. I mean, this is a few seasons down the line. There's like a complaint within the fandom about how, oh, well, that was a big retcon. They were never all that close. Da da da. And it's like, well, no, they maybe weren't that close, but I mean, we're seeing here from the jump that these people did have a pretty fleshed out interior life before the Walshes showed up. I mean, they have known each other for a while, and maybe there is something coming up later where as they become more of the gang, some line or some bit of history where they specifically say, oh, Kelly and Dylan, oh, we'd never really talked. We never knew each other. But I mean, to this point, it seems like they're as familiar as pretty much anybody else in this social circle within the school. I mean, Dylan seems to know Steve, even though they're not like super good friends.
Right.
So, I mean, he's sort of traveling and that's just Dylan, right? He's sort of a loner, sort of keeps to himself, but everybody knows him.
Yeah, he's in all the classes with them. They probably grew up relatively around each other in Beverly Hills. So,
yeah. The Walshes just provide more of a conduit.
Correct. Yes. Yep. All right, so we go back to the Walsh house, where Brenda's prepping her hair, and this is where you get, again, more of the goofiness, like I was talking about. Like, we get another Brenda daydream, like we got with the NASCAR racing, where this one, she's got blonde hair, and Cindy's kind of creeping on her, watching her. And it's just more. Brenda's continuing to struggle to fit in. So that's just more of this that we've seen since the start, but again, some more of that hokiness creeping in with her.
Yeah, I mean, to be charitable, I guess you could say this speaks to Brenda's sort of ongoing insecurity issues and struggling to find an identity here in her new home. That's been a kind of a thread that we've been tracking throughout this, but again, it is kind of goofy the way it's especially with the daydream, which is such a staple. I'm realizing of these early 90s shows, and I swear I think it's just a time-killing exercise just to do a visual gag so you can kind of press pause and not have to ask too much of your actors or your writers.
Yeah, I'm not as harsh on it as you guys, maybe because I know from the point of hindsight that's not gonna last too much longer.
Right.
But this stuff totally tracks with her character, like from the very start. Like she was trying to rebuild her identity in this new surrounding. So
yeah, all that works for me. I think it's been more the goofy like cutaway, like daydreams, and
I think her NASCAR is the only one that's really like.
Oh, the NASCAR one was awful.
That was absurd.
This one wasn't as bad, but it just to me it felt like more of a, oh wow, like we're still doing this when we get to this episode, like another daydream. And again, like I said throughout this, it just feels like she's being played as like comedy relief versus a meaty storyline. But it's fine. That's just kind of where it is right now.
I would guess so, just by the fact that like we see like her dream, her reflection of herself as a blonde, and I guess the episode kind of already gives it away that like they give her an awful blonde wig, like she doesn't look good, like she looks very pretty as brunette.
Yes.
Well, yeah, she's just overthinking this. So.
All right, so we get Brandon and Andrea studying in his room, and he's being a real piece of shit, just about curve and everything else, just like, just kind of being nasty to her for no reason. And he's really obviously projecting, right? He's mad at himself for sucking and not getting the A. Why does Steve do it? And what's his curve? And then you get Brenda again, like serving as a troll in the comic relief, right? Like she kind of comes in after Andrea leaves, pissed, and she's like, "Way to go, Romeo!" Like again, kind of just like the goofing on Brandon. But I thought this was, we haven't seen too much of like Brandon presented in a bad light a couple times, right? Once with where he got jealous of Dylan and all that, but this one felt like kind of the nastiest he's been. Like there was like
It
no
really did.
defense of
Yeah.
him here at all. Like he just was a shit to Andrea for no reason.
Yeah, just spitting bullets at her. I mean, all she's doing is trying to help, and it's like, if I don't know if he's totally oblivious to the way she rather obviously feels about him, or she's crushing on him a bit, but God, he really treated her like shit off of his shoe. And of course she's gonna storm out. I mean, that's reflects pretty badly on Brandon in that scene.
Yeah, and it's
he's got a real stick up his ass about this.
and they've
And I
done
know
like,
that they've been competitive. They sort of sparred back and forth, but I think it's different in a school setting versus, this is a girl hanging out in your room, basically trying to help you study. I mean, even if there's not romantic overtones, I just think maybe.
but there are though. But there are.
Yeah,
Like
I guess.
there have been without being, which I think is a point in their favor. Like there's been this kind of bubbling tension with them, but it hasn't been heavy-handed or talked about a ton. But it's like it's kind of recognized. Like Brenda kind of says it, and Jim and Cindy are kind of excited that she's over, and like it's kind of been building a little bit, but they haven't like shoved it in your face, which I thought's actually been pretty good.
Yeah, I suppose. It's just weird that he didn't kind of turn that competitive bullshit thing off at home and just lighten up a little. I just, it's weird to see that's kind of their relationship through and through right now.
Well, we'll also see later why he's feeling so much pressure, which maybe we could have used that earlier, but they were supposed to also infer it from like the basketball stuff with Jim and like how Jim treats him in that, yes, he kind of gives him a lot more leeway than Brenda, but he also has like way higher expectations from Brandon across the board.
True. Yeah, we forget this is right on the heels of that basketball episode.
Well, we find out here too, Brandon says it later at some point, like that Jim like graduated summa cum laude or whatever. Like, so we've learned a lot about Jim early on here too, right? Like he played basketball, he was like a stud in the classroom, and like so Brandon, I think without watching these early ones, you never really pick up on that later because they don't really get into it more. But here, you really are seeing like, Brandon constantly feeling like he's going to live up to Jim's expectations.
Yeah.
All right, so we go to Steve's house now, which is the first time we're there, and we get some more background for the first time really on his family. We get teased a little bit in the early ones, but he kind of talks up his history, all the divorces and the houses he's been in, and it didn't feel forced. It kind of just felt like, hey, like, yeah, these guys are kind of buddies, but they haven't really had the talk yet, right? Like they haven't gone deep beyond like surface level friendship, and now it's getting a little bit deeper. And they leave you leaving the scene thinking that Steve's a good student. Like I was like, oh, was this like a retcon? Like, was he actually a good student here? Because he's getting the A and talking it up about studying. And he's like, you just have to know the questions that are coming. And you kind of think like, oh, okay, well, maybe he was a good student at one point. And you're kind of building the bromance. And then you immediately find out like the next scene that he's just a giant fucking cheater, which is way more right in line with what you would expect.
Yeah, idiot savant. I don't think of Steve Sanders.
No, it's
chilling in the pool. He's just like totally unbothered by this seemingly very hardcore class and the questions that Brandon is grilling him with. It's like, yeah, want to go to the Lakers game? Got an extra ticket.
Yeah, he's just chilling, and it becomes a big moral crisis because Steve lets on. He's got the copy of the tests. Like this is it, Brandon. Like, you want to pass, or are you gonna, hold your morality into place? And Steve really starting to lure him. It's a great line, just another A on the Denzel curve. So how he says it. And then, so this is again our episodic Brandon moral play, right? That we get every episode.
Yep, and Steve is sort of once again the devil on his shoulder. The show may be feeling a little bit like it isn't quite sure yet what kind of character Steve is going to be. A bit mischievous, a little bit of a shit stirrer, but they won't commit to making him a all-out villain, certainly. They could have pulled that trigger in the last episode with the kind of, dog whistly racist comments he was making about
you don't feel that was enough of a trigger pull?
It was really riding the line, right? Talk about the Danzel curve. That one was about to step over it. So they sort of pulled back there, but it's interesting that again, just one episode later, we're seeing more moral ambiguity from Steve. Like he's a big fat cheater. But at least that, I mean, I don't know. Like we've all had some indiscretions in that area. I think you could maybe get away with that more than making your side character an all out racist. So yeah, I'm not sure about the choice to do back to back Steve episodes where he's a bit of a.
I feel like they're trying to make him I think they're trying to have a villain within the group, like a natural
villain.
Yeah, but not a super hateable villain, right? Like I think we have the villains of the week for that, but he's meant to be like the tension within the group because I think we see that play out even further too. We've seen it a little bit already with the comments about Kelly and stuff. So like I think he's always been made. I think early on the vision of him was to be kind of the asshole of the group. That's like, still part of the friends, but kind of the one that's the most annoying, I guess, like which is kind of a trope in movies and shows, right? Like there's always kind of the one guy that's annoying within the group, even though he's part of the group.
Yeah, he can't be the lead character because of his character flaws, but he does have more depth than, as you put it, the villain of the week, which he's never going to sink to that low.
All right, so we head into the girls' bathroom for a minute. I believe it was the girls' bathroom. Yes. Somewhere, Donna, where she's really being made to be an idiot. Like she's got two contacts in one eye. Like, I mean, this again plays in line with like some of the Brenda stuff I've talked about. Like, I mean, do we need to go this dumb with her? Like, I know they're trying to portray her maybe as like the typical Valley girl blonde gets, but like, fucking, like this felt like her Saved by the Bell character that was like, into Screech or whatever, but like two contacts with one in one eye. Like, I mean, come on. Like,
what a dumbass.
You gotta be real fucking yeah. I mean, like that's.
Maybe this
feels like the writers. Somehow punishing her because her dad got her on the show.
I was about to ask if I'm putting on my tinfoil hat to maybe consider that. So you thought of it too. I do sort of wonder if this is a writer thing where they just hate this character and hate that they have to do anything with her. So just make her look like a total idiot.
Yeah, it's like just way like you could do ditzy blonde without going this far over the top with it.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit mean spirited.
I mean, yes, two contacts in one eye. It's like this is like the fucking dumbest again. Like, who the fuck is doing that? All right, back to Danzel, who is a real oddball. He pronounced kudos, which really annoyed me. Andrea takes another fucking beating in this episode here. Brandon refuses to study with her now, and it's because he's nervous, right? Because he knows he's maybe going to be cheating, or he did cheat on this test, and he doesn't want her there. But she's really feeling like shit. Like now, he was a dick to her at the room. Now he's refusing to study with her. She's willing to give him another chance. Just not going well.
Mm-hmm. No. But and I think it's around the scene where we get the and this is totally unrelated, but I had to call it out, the drink machine in the middle of the hallway, apparently in West Beverly, like one of those old drink machines. It's like a very generic looking cold beverages, and I'm like, what is this doing here just in the middle of the school? Like, I guess the rich just aren't like us, right?
That's it. They have access to cold drinks whenever they need them.
Really?
Yeah.
And soda at that. I mean,
how do you pronounce? Yeah, got it.
If they could have gotten the Pepsi product, they would have gotten it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's totally unsponsored, but I'm like, damn. I remember it was a big deal when we got a Fruitopia dispenser in my high school and fucking.
What happened to Fruitopia? Is that completely gone? That was a Coke product, right?
I want to say, yeah, it was a Coke product. I want to say you can still get it in Canada, but yeah, it definitely went the way of Surge and whatnot around here.
God. That's my beloved Surge.
Yeah,
I'm verklempt about that.
There's got to be a market. I know they tried to kind of redo it right at some point, but
I like the Crystal Pepsi thing. Yeah, it's just weird that they haven't brought a lot of that stuff back. Some of it, yeah, but I don't know. Zima even had its resurgence. Come on.
Everything comes back. Everything. Eric, how do you say? Do you say kudos or kudos when you pronounce it?
I say kudos like a normal person.
Good,
Kudos.
yes. Not like stupid fucking Denzel.
Yeah.
All right, so Jim's putting more pressure on Brandon, just overbearing. Like he's gonna back off. Like he's, well, you're gonna get an A, right? History's your best subjects, just really hammering him. After class, we get 1.2 where Brandon calls him Steve Saunders. Was that just a slip by Brandon, or is his name or just Steve Saunders?
Yeah.
Because he clearly says Saunders.
He does, yeah. I know we've heard Sanders prior to this, so I think that's just Jason Priestley not being great with names.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just reshoot it though? It was so aggravating to me.
Oh, I don't know. TV schedules. Who knows? Who knows how many days they have to shoot? 5, 6.
It was just the best take, and they said, "Fuck it, no one's gonna notice."
Whatever.
They're just blames
no one's gonna rewatch this in 30 years anyway. No one cares.
Steve Saunders. All right. So then we get back to the pit where Denzel basically starts talking to Brandon because he passes the class, and he's like, he's been coming into the pit, and at first he was ignoring Brandon, and then he kind of warmed up to him a bit because he started getting better grades, and then Brandon just fucking goes off on him, just loses it on Denzel. Like, your curve sucks. It's no one's learning anything. You only care about basically
memorization.
Yeah, memorization and not learning anything. It was really hardcore. Like, they really he went heavy on Denzel. And Denzel kind of let him empty the chamber on him.
Yeah. I will say this is another one of those moments in the show, and this is, really throughout the run of the show, that especially when Brandon is still in high school and even a little bit into the college years, the way that he speaks to adults just so kind of takes me out of it sometimes. I get that that's his character, but I don't know. I just think about the world today and even back then, and there's just no way like a kid would ever be able to get away with at least in the circles, my social circles. There's no fucking way. Like, you would get,
not at that point,
your ass reamed.
And he's doing it in front of his boss at his place of work.
Yeah.
A room full of people.
Right in front of that construction worker. That guy just wants to enjoy his hamburger after a long, hard day.
It would have been one thing if they were like in his office or something, but yeah, in a public place, him just fucking laying him out. Brandon's he's been feeling ballsy lately.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Well, and I guess this is the second time we've seen it again in this early run. Remember the restaurateur from, I don't know, that episode where he gets the job at the Peach Pit, the crappy place he worked before.
Yeah. Oh, it was episode 6, right?
Yes.
So they're like halfway through a semester already.
Yeah, it seems.
Well, it says midterm, right? This is the midterm, so.
Yeah, they said midterms. It seems like the show has done a pretty consistent job of keeping up with, like, this aired in mid-November, and I remember it was a couple episodes ago where Brandon even says, "Oh, it's November and the leaves haven't changed." So, I would think if anything, they might be a little bit ahead of in this universe when the show actually aired.
It feels like it's going to be like late October, I think, or something. Because I think it might have been October. He said with it's hot in October or something. Because midterm, that'd be like October. So I'm thinking we're like late October right now in this time frame.
Either way, he's shooting his mouth off, and he's not thinking about the long-term consequences.
Right.
No, definitely not. He is completely feeling himself. So Andrea catches Brandon cheating basically in class. And that's a really intense scene. Like, she's like shooting fucking darts at him. And her nature is to narc, and she is fighting it because they don't say it again. And this is what I was saying. Like, they are doing a good job building the tension with them without hammering it home. Like, normally she may have like fucking dropped the dime on him because he's fucking up her grade. And because deep down she's into Brandon, or, they play it off like it's because they're friends, but she's obviously clearly into him.
Right.
And she's like, "You're lucky I didn't fucking turn your ass in. Like, enough with the bullshit."
And it's not just that he disappointed her as a friend. It's, she's got the hots for this guy, and she's kind of feeling it even harder that, he's not maybe the person that she thought he was.
Right.
But yeah, it's a great explosive Andrea scene. I'm talking to you.
She was
Good.
not happy.
I know.
Don't fuck with her grades.
I wish we got more of those with her yelling at him over the show.
Yeah.
Were you guys surprised Brandon actually cheated?
No,
No.
I think it works this early.
Yeah, this early, especially where each episode is still kind of in that morality play framework. You sort of have to do the deed in order for the lesson to take. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you could have done that maybe with a different character, but
Or just that he gets close and doesn't do it, like because I feel like Brandon's always held such a paradigm of fortitude and not giving in on this kind of stuff. So it was actually surprising to see him just straight up cheat right away. But he's definitely, we've seen cracks in him early on, despite the other stuff that they've done with that have made him the hero and the king of Beverly Hills and everything. But so it's been interesting that they have pushed on that already.
Yeah, I think they're showing some willingness to allow even the lead characters to make mistakes as long as they learn from those mistakes, and as long as they're not like killing anybody. there's a limit to this. So a little bit cheating on one test on a midterm. I don't know. It's probably a little bit relatable to viewers.
So we go back to the house now. Kelly does Brenda's hair. Kelly gets somebody digs in on Cindy's hair, which I thought were funny. Basically, she's the one that needs to hit the fix of the hair, not you.
Right.
Yes, during their barbecue, that just makes it worse.
Yeah, just roasting her hair. And then, so they do the Brenda's hair, and it comes out, I don't know, burgundy, burnt orange. I'm not sure the best, burnt sienna.
Yeah.
Best way to phrase it, but not good. And it's like Rosanna Dana, like all fucking like puffed up.
I didn't even think of that.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty brutal.
There's a deep cut for you. That's So I mean that's what it's like. It's all puffed out and just the color's a fucking mess. Brandon's trolling her, but Brandon does step in and like when Jim and Cindy see it, he defends his sister. I do like how they've built that into here, like the natural twin defense system that they've built. Right? It's like this is her decision. She looks good, right? Like kind of trying to weather the pending storm before she catches shit for fucking her hair up.
Yeah. Well, as far as fashion moments too, I thought she did a nice job of accessorizing, trying to make the best out of a very bad situation here. It's she sort of dressed for her hair. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't just think they have a giant handkerchief and like Jackie O sunglasses just lying around before school. So
right.
All right, so that is going on, and then we get Brandon and Dylan are on campus, and Brandon's kind of talking about Denzel, and Dylan's like, well, he's all right. It was tough in the moment, but I learned a lot, and he's actually retiring this year. He hasn't told anyone, and so Dylan's kind of talking up Denzel, and it's one of those teachers, right, that you may hate in the moment, but you look back and realize like you learned a lot there. But he does warn Brandon, like, hey, don't fly too close to the sun, buddy. Like, don't fuck around too much with this stuff, with the cheating and all this shit. Like, you're playing with fire, basically.
Mm-hmm. This is maybe early hints of Dylan's, I don't even know how to describe it, kind of his intellectualism.
Yeah.
Where later on, he's not much of a scholar, right, in these early episodes, but later on he does begin to take his studies a lot more seriously. And we already know, like, he's fucking reading Lord Byron in his leisure time, apparently. And
messing around the computer lab, too. So
messing around in the computer lab. Yeah. So it's like he's talking up, this Denzel teacher. You figure he maybe got out of the class with a C or something and was grateful for the experience. But it's funny. It's another one of those, like, Dylan is presented as so much more worldly, even though they're the same age, the same grade. But
he's just experienced more coming from the situation he's been in. Right?
Yeah.
All right. So Dan,
I like that scene.
For sure.
Yeah.
This is very much still early Dylan Zen philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
All right. So we go back to the classroom where now it's Denzel's turn. to really start fucking with Brandon, and he pushes his shit in hard with the trolling, big time in the class, right? He's like, well, why, whatever, talk about the Native Americans, and kind of like, why was this the case, Brandon? And like, Brandon's got nothing to say, right? He's like, I thought you wanted to, give your thoughts and be challenged and not just memorized, and like just completely just shoves it back on him, which I thought was well played. Like, he let Brandon have his moment in the pit, but then he knew like he could just blow him up in front of his friends in the class.
It around.
So, yeah,
I love it.
Little good for the goose is good for the gander. What was your guys' favorite? Like, did you like history? Did you hate it? I really liked history class. It was always like one of my favorite subjects, but I hated this period that they're talking about here. And I felt like it was like whenever you get to the good stuff, like the year would end, you'd go to the next year and like you'd restart. Like, I feel like I learned about like the beginning of America and like Native American history, and I feel like I learned that so many times, and like Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to just get to like more modern stuff, and I feel like in college later, like I finally was able to take a class that was more like modern history, but God, I could not, like, I just always found that stuff like super bland. Maybe because I went through it so many times.
Definitely could get pretty repetitive. For me, it was not so much any one subject as it just depended on the teacher. In history, I think I had a pretty good track record. I had decent teachers all throughout, like, with one exception. In middle and high school, I had the same teacher like for a couple of years. But yeah, to your point, I think the farthest along we got was probably Vietnam, and maybe I don't think we even got into like the 70s, you know. And
I feel like I always wanted to get there, and I just like never did.
Yeah, and that's like literally where the history book would end. I mean, even if we covered everything in the book, it was like, that's it. And it's like, well, okay, it's the year 2000, so what about the past 30 years?
Well, I really wanted like the Cold War and Russia, like that stuff was super interesting to me.
Yeah,
and I just feel like I'd always just go back to like the War of 1812 and like French and all that stuff.
I certainly remember my history books were probably published towards the end of the Cold War. That's for sure. But no, I liked history class to a point. But certainly there was a lot of Civil War, Revolutionary War, that type era. Occasionally you get like some other outliers, like ancient Rome and such, and Caesar. Yeah, I enjoy it for the most part. Like the Vermont school system did as best as could, and I had good teachers to do the best they could. But yeah, I enjoyed history, and I always thought you could get more. Obviously, for me, understanding was challenging. I couldn't just have books. Like if I need to learn, I would do more. I would watch like movies. I watch biographies to try best to gauge material. So.
Well, you would have done well with Denzel, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so.
Maybe.
So then we get back to the Peach Pit where Brandon's like fucking around again, and Nat has a great line. He goes, "Brandon, I'm curious. Do you still work here?" He's fucking with him. And then Denzel been in there for dinner like he always is, and Brandon leaves. And at first I'm like, why is Denzel just hanging out in his car reading the book? But then we find out that his tire was flat, and it seems like maybe someone let the air out. And we kind of get a nice little bonding moment between them. So Brandon's basically like, you're waiting, and he's like, you might be waiting a while. And he's like, oh, you don't know how to change a flat. And he's like, well, some stuff I'd rather just pay someone to do. And Brandon's like, I'll do it for you. So Brandon fixes the tire for Denzel. What doesn't take any money, but we get a razor sharp moment where Brandon drops the copy of the test, and Denzel picks it up, but doesn't open it and just hands it back to Brandon. So I like this tease, Tim, because I think in any other show, the lazy play would have been he opens it and sees it, and we get some tense moments. But I like that we didn't get that from Denzel, that he just, we get the tease and the tension, but not that.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right, a lazier show would have just had the reveal, but this writing was smart and just kind of reminding the viewers, hey, Brandon's a big fat cheater, and it's not so much that he almost got caught, it's that this speaks to the guilt that he's now experiencing for cheating. It's not the fear of getting caught. It's that, oh, I cheated in the first place. And I like that little reminder there. And yeah, there's a bit of suspense, and the question hanging over this is he going to get caught? But ultimately, it just serves to really speak to his guilt over the whole matter.
Yes.
And this little bonding scene he has with Denzel.
Right. Especially since he literally just got the test from Steve. More of the devil on his shoulder. I mean, he's literally wearing a red leather jacket when he comes in the Peach Pit.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Wow, nice
yeah.
visual
Imagery
imagery there. Yeah,
A little bit.
That.
Yeah.
And this is the midterm he's got, and that's why he's so torn. He's like, a quiz is the quiz, Steve, but like this is the midterm. I feel like a little shakier doing this.
True. Yeah, I should correct myself. He did not cheat on the actual midterm. It was on a quiz.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, he had been cheating on the quizzes, and this is the midterm.
So you got to figure this episode probably covers a lot of ground. I think that the narrative it presents, you could almost say the events of this episode might sort of weave in and out of other episodes we've already seen, just because it covers so much. Probably covers a few weeks here, just leading up to that midterm. I mean, how many fucking quizzes did we see before?
Yeah,
that?
well, it's once a week is kind of what he said, right? So
Uh-huh.
I think we've had he failed one, and then he cheated on one, at least. And I feel like maybe one other one in there.
And then it's the midterm, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe maybe we're a spread of a month in here.
Yeah, this could have started, back closer to the beginning of the school year, and
Right.
where we end is with the midterm, and late October, early November, whatever.
Yeah,
so I think we're covering a few weeks here.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I had a quick question for you guys. We talked about like how the story kind of works early on in the show because we're still, understanding the characters and such. But had this been a situation where they realized that it was best? I mean, right now they're treating them like the juniors they are, and then also we know in season 2 they're going to break on it that they're going to be juniors again.
Right.
Had in hindsight they decided to make them sophomores, would it have been better to hold this kind of storyline off for the next year, or would it not have worked as well?
Yeah, because you sort of figure that junior year the stakes are kind of higher, right? As far as your acting. I mean, you've got some wiggle room, your first 2 years of high school. If you're fucking up, it's like, okay, whatever. You can buckle down your last 2 years if need be. But yeah, are you feeling this much pressure just like your sophomore year? Nowadays, probably. Back then, I don't know. But I mean, that also speaks to West Beverly, right? The culture they talk about how it's academically they're, supposedly so much more superior, not just to other schools, but even for, this Beverly Hills high school. I mean, I think it kind of works either way, but it does. The context is a little bit different if you're looking at it from the standpoint of, they're juniors, they're doing like SAT prep and all this other shit.
Okay.
All right.
I was just curious about. Thanks.
So we get that tense moment, and then we kind of get more nasty Brandon. Like he's explaining these gray areas to Andrea, and he starts gaslighting her hard about like the lack of support and everything. Like I know this is kind of the worst Brandon's been as a person in this episode. Like he's really just like almost blaming her for what he had to do. In a way, or just blaming others for like his decision here. And then she kind of caves as always. She's like, oh, maybe you're right. And so it's again an ongoing trend where Andrea is very firm in her morals and stances, but continuously backs down when it's Brandon on the opposite side of it. Like it's clear she's just got a thing for him, and it alters her stance that she takes very, very seriously.
Yeah, well, and he's also talking to her as if she has the same information that he does.
Right.
And she totally doesn't. She's completely in the dark, and has just been on the receiving end of like a lot of abuse from him. And I mean, she's struggling through this class like anybody else. I mean,
it makes it worse that like this scene's in the library, and he's the one that comes up to her Like she's
Yes.
not keeping with them; she's
Mhm.
keeping to herself. That makes it 10 times worse.
Yeah,
He's trying
makes
to
it like
justify this.
he just picks a fight, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to see like how that plays out too. Does he continue to use her, right? Like basically, how much does she take? How much does he abuse her blind loyalty to him? Because it feels like
Mhm.
now it's starting to become a trend that he knows kind of maybe he's stringing her along a little bit. Maybe this feels something for her, but it feels like he's constantly kind of leveraging her for his own gain, whether he knows he's doing it or not. It's starting to become a thing.
Right, right. And her being a bit of a doormat when it comes to him is becoming more obvious too.
Yep. So we'll see how that plays out. So Brenda, we see her going to jog with the hair. What is
Yep.
this awkward jogging she's pointing?
Oh,
I mean, she's just not good. Just like
No.
Yeah.
she does not know how to run.
I know. We kind of skipped over the awkward reveal of her hair to Kelly and Donna, and that's just
that's
bad
good.
enough right there. That Kelly does not take any responsibility
For
for
fucking it
her
up.
part of that. Yeah. But no, this jogging thing is her outfit, her stance. It's just all kinds of weird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
And
like,
all-
when does she jog? Like, I don't remember a time where Brenda ever does anything athletic. Like, they should have like gone for a walk. Would have been better than a jog. They
I
should
mean,
have seen her
really.
run for 1 second and been like, yeah, let's have Brenda go for a walk.
it's not as extraneous as like Phoebe on Friends, where that's intentionally done more for comedy.
Oh yeah, this wasn't played for comedy. For once, it was not played for comedy at all. It was very clear that they were just like, yeah, Brenda, go jog, and she just had no clue how to fucking run.
Go jog.
So Dylan pulls up on his hog on the side of the road, and he's flirting hard already. And Brenda says, "I like your butt. I mean your bike." And Dylan's like, "All right, hop on." So here we go. I think now we're finally gonna start seeing this maybe start to ramp up a bit. Where Dylan is clearly has a shine for her, and she is very into him. And she rides off on the back of the bike to go to Dylan's special hairdresser to fix her hair.
Yeah. I'll just point out that I'd love this little scene between the two of them. I mean, say what you will about her jogging, but she certainly stands out. She caught Dylan's eye.
Yes.
And he's he kind of says all the right things in that scene.
Yep.
And he's gonna make this better. I just really love his jacket because my grandfather had a jacket just like that, and when he died in the late 90s, I got a lot of his hand-me-down clothes and stuff. You know how it is when a relative dies,
Yes.
and you gotta have to go through and get rid of their stuff. And I was like, damn, this is a pretty sharp jacket. And I still have that jacket to this day, and I love it. I swear it looks just like that. Great jacket. Great fashion there. So I definitely had to put that down as one of my, not even so much 90s fashion moments, but just it's almost like a personal association sort of thing.
And he
cool.
does get her hair fixed, and that's where we get kind of at the end, where Brandon's basically my friend Dylan. She's like my friend Dylan. So this is to this point, Dylan's kind of been just a Brandon thing right here since he's arrived, but now Brenda also is discovered the wonderful Dylan McKay as a friend, and perhaps more. So I like the wrap up we have where Denzel kind of throws the curveball, and he's like, here's your test, throw it away, and we're going to do an essay about what you know. And Brandon studied for real, and he was prepared. And Steve kind of gets burned, which is a nice payoff there. Without hammering it home, you just kind of know like he had only studied the answers to the cheat on it. Was not prepared to write an essay. And then I like the post too, where Denzel and Brandon kind of have their moment, where Denzel basically admits that he knew Brandon had a copy of the test, but Brandon says, I wasn't going to use it. And you get the moment too with, we hadn't talked about this, but one of the running gags was everyone mocking Denzel's clothes. And we had found out at one point that basically his wife had passed away and she had bought him a bunch of clothes before she died because he knew that he'd be lost without her to pick out his clothes. So he wears these ugly shit because she bought it for him.
Well, they act like he does wear these ugly, and it's like he looks like
they didn't look that bad.
Well-dressed older gentleman. Like
I think it's supposed to be like a Beverly Hills thing, right? Like, like he doesn't fit in there with these clothes, but if he was just like at fucking,
Right.
BC Prep or some shit in Massachusetts, like he probably would have fit in okay.
Yeah. It's like a college professor, and they're like, oh, this fucking ragamuffin here. And
Right. What'd you think of the wrap up, Eric? The payoff there at the end.
I like the payoff. I was expecting it. I certainly enjoyed it. I was like, yeah, just try something different. Rip it up. Sorry, I'm thinking about the scene before at the non-apology. Brenda and Andrea. God, that just
Right.
Got you shook, huh?
Yeah, I'm like I'm rewatching the scene while we're doing this. I'm like, he is not say sorry at all.
No.
He talks around it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He gaslights her hard, like hard,
Yeah.
like just completely blames her for like everything. It was bad. Like Andrea had every right at some point to just like fucking put a bullet in this guy's head, like the way he treats her.
For sure. It's a testament to Priestley, like how good he is and how charismatic he is, that like you don't see it too much.
Right.
At least the first time.
No, and I don't think
turn this whole this world upside down for this young lady, basically in the course of again, however many weeks this takes place.
Well, if I hadn't like, I think I'm only noticing it because, right, Tim, like we're watching this and taking notes and like talking it through every episode. I think if you're just watching this, you probably don't pick up on it maybe as much, but I think as we're like breaking it down, you're kind of realizing just kind of what Brandon's doing.
Yeah, not good behavior.
No, he's just this relationship with Andrea, just where it's going. Like you said, turned her life upside down. He's kind of like in another show, he'd be the toxic guy that like ruins her world. Like if this wasn't a Walsh-Centric show where he's supposed to be like the hero, the story would be like this guy came from Minnesota and completely fucked with this poor girl, and she enters this toxic relationship that knocks her off course.
Well,
yes.
Well, there are some elements of season 3 I can't quite remember until I get to the rewatch, so there's a chance that might still happen. I don't exactly know how their relationship goes, whether they hit college. I know once she gets to college, like she's fucked.
Yeah. Well, God willing, we'll get there.
Yep. Give it time. But
all right.
I'm sorry. I do like this. I do like this resolve nonetheless. Like, I feel like it was the shit way to do it with just Brandon being an asshole, but like, there's an element of him being right and like him like because the guy was being very harsh and like grading on such a hard curve. Like
right, and maybe Brandon fixes it. Maybe this guy doesn't end up retiring and he, alters the way he teaches or whatever. But yes, just a different way it probably could have gone about it.
Yeah, I feel like that should very much be well commented on, especially since this is one of the few real plot lines we're going to get revolving around the classroom.
Right.
At this point in the show, so.
Yeah, well, see, that's another thing we've talked about, Tim, a bit, right? It's like kind of when does like the school stuff really kind of fade? I know we still get some of it in there, obviously, but
no, that's a great point.
Right now it's very much like a high school classroom drama, right?
Right, right. Where academics actually matter and are baked into the plot, and that's not something you associate with this series if you're a longtime viewer. Yeah. So I sort of appreciated that.
I certainly like this stuff because I like seeing these characters, even Steve, involved in this. But obviously we know where it will end up.
I mean, look, I had a pang of anxiety just from personal experience of the guy. You sit down for the test and he tells you, I mean, nothing so dramatic, but tear up this test. I've flipped the script and you're going to do this instead. Like, there's nothing worse in the world than feeling like you're prepared for a test. And then they're like, no, change of plans. It's like, I've been there, man. That sucks.
The only comparison I can make in a real life setting is if the teacher doesn't show up and you have a sub. And I don't really think the sub would go through that with the test. That's the only thing I can think of because I've never seen anyone do that in real life, like tear it up.
Yeah.
All in all, I thought this was a good episode. I thought it started a little shaky, but I thought once it got rolling and we dug in deep to Denzel's layers and they filled in some of the gaps, I thought it got really good. I like that they didn't just stay surface level with, this guy's an asshole teacher.
Right.
We almost got like, I like that they gave him some depth and like dug into what made him the way he was and why he was the way he was. It added that layer and it it speaks to like this being an hour instead of a half hour, right? Like I think that helps because
Mhm,
it gives them time
mhm.
to do stuff like that. But it just put a nice spin differently into the episode. And we saw some of that last week, right, with the basketball player and the team, like all that stuff. Where we get some layer and depth to what made him be in his position. So I like that they're taking the time to explore this stuff versus just sticking like surface level entropy.
Sure. In this case, I can be okay with a couple characters aren't around this week.
You're right.
If it helps makes the story better.
Yeah, for sure, because they a lot of that time to expanding on Denzel, right, versus just like 100% Walsh or something like that. Like they actually let us understand why we get to where we are, and when it made it more poignant at the end when they come together, right, versus just like
Yep.
getting there.
Definitely.
I do think the comic relief Brenda needs to turn soon, but maybe we'll see that with the Dylan stuff creeping in. Some of the side players creeping in, but I think we're seeing the consistency now. I think we're getting that too in here. Like we're starting to flow.
Definitely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was going into this again, not really remembering the episode that well, and thinking, "Oh, this is what it's really going to be. Like this is a cheating episode. This is going to suck." But it really did pick up and go some places I did not expect. And this was a sneaky good episode. I would agree.
All right, why don't we get to our categories and our awards, and we'll wrap things up here. So we usually do about 6 or 7 categories, and we'll do some rankings for those that are new. So best scene to me, I kind of went with a tie between Brandon blowing up Denzel at the Peach Pit and then Denzel trolling Brandon back in class. They felt like symbiotic scenes to me. So
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Brandon changing Denzel's tire outside the
yeah, that was
peach
good
pit,
too.
just with the tension of is he gonna get caught? Oh no, he's not, but now he feels super guilty. Like that, there was a lot baked into that scene that, and I thought it all came off pretty well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to also agree with Tim. I think that's the better overall scene. Like, I'm fine with the earlier scene of him blowing up. It's so radical where he chooses to do it as placement point. But no, the tire changing is a lot better.
I think I just like the yelling scenes. I'm looking back at my past ones. The last episode, I liked when he yelled at James, and then Brenda and Cindy when they had their big blowout. I went with that one too.
Yeah.
All right. Most important scene, I went with, again, I picked 2 because I felt like they were tied together. And that is Kelly's horniness for Dylan and then Dylan's horniness for Brenda. So, like, we're already seeing a little bit of the 3 kind of coming into play. And I don't know if they were already planning. I don't know what they had in mind, but it was interesting to see the 3 of them kind of right together out of the gate, like all flirting with each other.
I am right in there with you. And if I had to pick one over the other, like gun to my head, I guess I'll go with the Dylan Kelly interaction only because we know Dylan and Brenda is going to happen like very soon. So I mean, yes, it's important, but it's not like it's going to be people will think of that as a callback to anything really. It's them heating up, right?
Right.
And that will be an incredibly important pivotal relationship. But the Dylan Kelly one is something I don't think people would necessarily saw coming back then. And to look back on, you're like, oh shit, that was a really early interaction between those two that maybe takes on greater meaning, knowing what you know in retrospect.
What do you have, Eric?
Most important is been kind of tough. I certainly agree with Tim, his points, and I do enjoy the Kelly Dylan relationship, perhaps a little more. But I guess I gotta give it to the chalking scene and like where they finally just have a one-on-one interaction and like he just shows like it's just general like chillness and like he's willing to help her out and jam. Yeah, I think that says a lot. That builds on their relationship going forward.
All right, most 90s look, I went with Brandon's brown vest over the gray shirt that he had.
Yeah, I had that one too.
What'd you have, Eric?
It might be it. There's also Dylan's like tan coat and just the overalls, like the half overall off. It's It just
He's
burns my
also
brain.
wearing straight up pajamas in one scene, which I think we've seen before in this show as well.
Yeah. Also, point out to Jim's sweater, his yellow sweater vest, like he just came back from playing tennis.
That's a
he's
good
going on
dad.
about, While Brandon's in the background, like he's pontificating about Brandon's being so fucking great.
Nice dad tennis sweater. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, most 90s moment. I just went with grading on a curve. Like, I don't know if that's a 90s thing or if they still do it today, but it felt 90s to me. That was like something you heard more at that time. I don't know if it's been phased out or not, but
yeah, I think I'll agree with that actually. There weren't a whole lot of options for this one, but just the whole test anxiety and which I mean I'm not saying that's not a thing anymore, but the flavor of it is certainly very 90s in how it's presented
Right.
here.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't know. That's so specifically 90s. I'll go with you on the grading on the curve. Yeah, I really don't hear about that as much anymore.
Right. Well, good. I hope they phased it out. And that's also one of my 2 lessons learned. Don't grade on a curve. It's stupid.
Okay. Yes.
And then also Brandon, I didn't mark down who he said it to, but it was a great line. He goes, "Don't spend it all on one place or on one face," which was I don't remember who the fuck he said it to. Do you guys remember it? I remember it was a great line. I just can't remember when he said it. Don't spend it all in one place or on one face.
It sounds like it would be directed to Kelly, but
wait, didn't Nat say that to him when he gave him his payday?
Oh, you're right. Nat said it to him. I'm sorry.
That's another good Nat zinger.
Yeah, Nat. That's what I meant. Nat said it to Brandon. Yep.
Yeah,
great Nat
So he
zinger.
gives him his check. Yeah, don't set it all in one place or on one face.
That's a lesson for sure.
When it comes to mayonnaise, you can't be too specific. No. Let's see. I mean, the lesson is pretty straightforward, I guess. Don't cheat. But it's hard to. I kind of tend to bastardize these lessons as we watch these.
How about just don't specifically dye your hair to impress one guy?
Well, that's a good one too. Don't make bad hair choices to impress a boy.
Do it for yourself, for your own self-improvement, for no one else.
Yeah.
All right, best hookup. I went Brandon and Denzel. I thought they really had a thing going here.
Wow. Okay.
Teacher-student love.
I guess I'll go Brenda and Dylan. I mean, they haven't quite hooked up yet, but we're getting there. They're undressing each other with their eyes. I'll take it.
I'm gonna have to go with that. I mean, if Denzel could come back for more than one episode, that'd be something. But
well, it's not a relationship. It's just
he hit it and quit it.
Yeah, the Steve Brandon bromance it says dark point, so I can't really get behind that.
All right, best quote. It's just irritating how you always think you're right, Brandon. I am right, Andrea. That was funny. And then, excuse me for living, Brenda says, which is kind of a Brenda line. I had to call out there because I don't think it's the last time we're gonna hear that one. But
I think I've already used mine, which was in the heat of Brandon and Andrea's argument. I'm talking to you. It was so just over dramatic. It's like that should have been in her opening credits montage. We're seeing all the characters, and her spinning around and flicking her finger at him should definitely be in for like at least 3 seasons worth of Andrea opening credits.
What do you got, Eric?
Yeah. Well, you got some good ones. So just go for the obvious. I'm wearing both contacts in the same eye.
That's a good one.
Why not?
All right, final grade. I ended up surprisingly liking this a lot, and I had it on par with our last one, Tim. So I went 6 out of 10 again, which ties it for the best episode so far. I just thought this felt very similar to the last one. I like the consistency we've been given. I like the deep dive into Denzel. We had a lot of development with Brenda and Dylan, which was key, and it wasn't ham-fisted. We saw some more with Steve and Brandon and kind of what tensions could exist with them. And, we saw a little edginess out of Brandon, too. So we'll see how that plays out. So I thought we had a lot going on.
We did. I think I enjoyed this more than the last episode. I don't want to give it. I don't want to give it a 7 because that just feels sort of too high.
Right.
So maybe 6.5. Would that work?
Okay. Yeah.
That feels very fair. I would do the same.
I'm not going to get into quarter stars here.
No, I'll stick to the halves. We'll probably regret that, but all right.
Yeah, as we
Let's
do.
hit our trackers really quick. So for songs, when Brandon's talking to Dylan and Kelly and Donna see Brandon's new hair was Policy of Truth, Depeche Mode.
That was a great use of that too.
Yes. And then when Brenda's jogging is Bed Spring Kiss by Jellyfish when Dylan comes by on the bike. So
our second appearance by Jellyfish in this early run of the show.
I guess I'll have to pull up YouTube because I'm not really familiar with Jellyfish at all.
It's a tight little early 90s band. We're not around for very much, but they had some bangers.
This crew loved them, that's for sure. Whoever's editing the show. All right. Characters. Mr. Denzel was the only debut. Relationships, I noted Brandon and Steve continues. Brandon and Denzel, and Brenda and Dylan starts up. So I put those in there. And then for places and things, I just had Steve's house. I think it was the only new place we saw.
Yeah.
Or you guys, have we had Dylan's motorcycle yet? I guess we could have that in, right?
I guess we haven't seen his motorcycle.
No.
Put that down.
We've seen the inside of Steve's house. We saw his room at least in the pilot, but we haven't seen the outside of his house. So
that's the first time. This felt like the real first time. Like we had the pool, saw the house.
Well, they made sure to have those nice long shots when they're introducing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So. All right, let's do our character ranking. So, Eric, the way we've usually been doing this is kind of based on this episode, but also a little bit baked in kind of how they've been, right? So this episode kind of influencing the overall. So we'll figure out that ranking and then we'll add that onto our overall totals once we do that. So would we all agree that Dylan was still the best in this episode?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess probably was. Factoring in as well, like that he's already kind of on top.
Yeah.
I wouldn't move him.
Yeah, he's just that cool. So,
do you want to keep Brandon too, even with his gaslighting bullshit in this episode? To me, it's more attrition in this one. I don't think
it is. Yeah,
had a big enough showing to pass him.
Nah, nobody's gonna lap him on the basis of this.
If Brenda had a bigger episode, maybe she could have. But...
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Do we want to keep her third though?
Who was after her last?
Yeah, who's just below her?
All right, so last episode we had it where it was Brenda, Jim, Cindy, Steve. And then we had David and Andrea. Andrea was down there, but she had a good episode. I don't know how far we're going to bump her based on this one, but
right.
I don't know. Do I want to move Steve all the way up that far?
Over Brenda?
Yeah, I mean, I could justify if you want. I could justify Brenda and then Steve.
Yeah, I think I'd move Steve and Andrea over both Walshes.
I think I would too.
Really?
Yeah, keep Brenda where she's at, but
I mean, you could maybe argue Jim over Andrea, but I think Andrea passed Cindy for me for sure.
Yeah, this is a huge episode for Andrea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to?
I mean, look, how long is she going to stay there? So
right, not long. Do we want to leave Kelly below David, even though he wasn't in this one? Like, how much do we want to punish David for not being on? Because I know we've liked him a lot. So we had David, Andrea, Kelly, then Nat, Scott, Donna. So I think we can comfortably put Scott and Donna last again. Even though Scott wasn't on this one, I still put him above Donna because she looks like such an idiot.
Yeah. I'm fine moving Kelly up because she's gonna move up quite a bit in the next episode for sure.
So we want her above David. What do you think, Tim? David's been a little shaky.
He hasn't had a lot of development. You know, even when he does appear, he's kind of just. I mean, what does he really do more than Scott? You know, other than we like him more. Yeah, I would feel okay putting Kelly above David.
Would you put Kelly above Cindy?
Not yet, no.
And then Nat below David still?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I
Well,
bumped him up.
Yeah.
He's
He's
just
mad
got,
about
I
it?
just questioned myself. Yeah, I just
I
questioned
mean,
myself.
a lot of this episode, pertains to Nat's restaurant, and Nat's got good fun energy with Brandon.
He's got those good lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put him up. Yep.
All right, we will. All right, Eric, you want to quickly tell us about Blockbuster Rewind while I run the numbers to crunch the totals?
Yes, Blockbuster Rewind is only at this time a monthly podcast where myself, Andy Atherton, and Scott Shiflett review a series of films, if part of a movie series or overall theme, with a guest. Tim was our very first guest over a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
Now.
Doing Jaws. Yeah.
We did all 4 Jaws films.
That was
And
fun.
It was, and we've covered a variety of different films of different genres over the last 14 episodes, and obviously some favorites of the PTB extended universe have been guests, including obviously Jennifer Smith, Scott Criscolo, Matt Suska, Jacob Williams, Sean Kidd, and right now we're currently looking for a guest potentially for our upcoming episode on American Pie. We're going to cover the 4 theatrical releases. That's our best bet. We're never gonna go 4 hours.
That's an important distinction because there have been several direct-to-video American Pie films that no one has seen.
Yes.
Including one that came out during COVID last year.
Oh my God.
On Netflix.
Wow.
No. So
all right.
yeah,
be sure to check that out on the Pop Experience.
Yes, PTB Pop Experience. It's a lot of fun and a lot of different various opinions. So you're gonna get something from it.
All right, very good. All right, I've crunched the numbers. So here's our official ranking from worst to best. Still in last place with 6 points, Donna Martin. After her with 11 points, Nat Pasuccio, so he's climbing. Scott Scanlon with 16 points. That's our bottom 3. Kelly Taylor with 30. And then Andrea Zuckerman with 31. So they're rounding toward the bottom still. They've had some shaky showings, but this was a big one for them to bump up.
Yep.
We got Jim Walsh with 34, David Silver with 38, Cindy Walsh with 43. So she's decent ahead above Jim, which is surprising at this point for me. Steve Sanders with 49 in 4th place. And then our top 3, Brenda Walsh is down to 3rd with 56 points in this episode. Dylan finally passed her by 1 with 57. And then Brandon Walsh still in 1st place with 66 points. He's our number 1 character, Tim, to date. Anything you want to plug before we wrap up, Tim?
Wow. I would just say you can also check me out on our sister feed, I guess you could call it, The Jenny Position, where you and I, JT, do a show with Jennifer Smith and with Scott Criscolo called The Journey Through Infinity. You may have heard the most recent episode of that podcast here as well on the North-South Connection podcast network, because it was, I don't know what you want to call it, simulcast perhaps, syndicated. Yeah. But that is a show where we go through all the films chronologically of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're more than halfway through, and our next episode is going to be talking Thor Ragnarok. Very popular film, one I enjoy a great deal. So I do want to encourage everyone to check that out because it will be available very soon, if not already. So it could be on the Jenny Position or right here on North-South Connection. Beyond that, you can follow me on social media. On Twitter, I am at Syke68, CYKE68.
All right, I am at
that'll do it.
Okay. I'm at JT the Pod Guy on Twitter. Appreciate everyone who's listened to this so far. If you're not a 2-0 fan, you know others that haven't heard it. Spread the word. We'd appreciate it. Toss it out on social media. And again, if you want to be part of the show and guest on an episode, we're a bit filled here in season 1, but there's still some slots open toward the back end. So just message me. We'll get you plugged in and we'll get you set up. Again, JT the Pod Guy on Twitter. A little dim sum, a little dem sum. Talk to you soon. Take care.